Namaste and a very warm welcome to all the viewers of Atharva Forum. Today we have with us Śatāvadhānī Dr R Ganesh, inarguably the greatest Avadhani alive. He's also a first-rate scholar in Indology and allied branches of knowledge, especially of Alankar Shastra and classical poetry. Today he is with us to talk about a very interesting topic, spontaneity in classical Indian performing arts with special reference to Avadhanam. A very, very warm welcome, Ganesh ji.
Namaskar. Thank you, Vasuki, for a generous introduction. You are always partial to me. That's all I can say about this.
You have earned every bit of the introduction that I gave. In fact, I would presume I was short of giving you due credits. At any rate, thanks for sparing the time to join Atharva Forum today and discuss this very interesting topic. I want to make sure that we define the terms in the title itself so that the expectations are set accordingly. So I would request you to help us with the definitions of the word classical as well as the phrase performing arts.
Thank you. It's always good to be precise about the terminologies which are being used. In our Shastras, it is often said, Sanya and Paribhāsa, they should be made clear. Then the further deliberation will become smooth and clear. Now coming to the word classical, it is of course an English word quite new to our tradition. In our tradition, we don't say anything as classical or non-classical, but as it has become very popular and so much of Indian learning, Indian arts, everything is revolving around this, we have accepted that word, and Sanskrit equivalent or a distinct equivalent is coined as well. Perhaps it is already available, Abhijata. Abhijata means very complete. It is not highborn. Many people wrongly take Abhijata to be highborn. It's only an Ekadesha a small restricted meaning. But the holistic meaning of Abhijata is a complete thing and an elevated one, a sublime one, and a noble one. In that sense, anything which is profound, anything which is sublime, will have its form and content in an inseparable manner. In our tradition, we call content as artha and form as shabda with respect to poetry. Or you can as well say rupa and rasa. Rasa is the content and rupa is the form. So the inseparability of form and content, in the words of Ananda Kumar Swami, structure and substance. Form is structure while content is substance. Inseparability is very, very important. And this has been very beautifully versified by Kalidasa in the valedictory verse of Raghuvamsham. Vagartha Vivasampraktau Vagartha Pratipattaye Jagatpitaro Vande Parvati Parameshwaro. There is samprutti, inseparability of vak and artha, structure and substance, form and content, rupa and rasa, or rupa and swarupa as well can say. And then the corollary of this is also very important. While there is inseparability of form and content, always the form should subserve the content. If form is not subserving the content, then in spite of its so-called inseparability, it will not be giving any great joy. It will be rather hampering the very development of art and very enjoyment of art. So by going through this, we can safely say that always form will be subservient to content and they will be inseparable. So the complementing nature of every detail with respect to content is being felt in classical art. This balance is very important, and that great balance is perhaps called as Aucitya, propriety. So classical art means it is not materialistic in its enjoyment. Its enjoyment is ethereal, non-materialistic. It is not utilitarian, as in the words of Bhagavan Sri Krishna, Kripanah Phalahetavaha. People who are always after material gain, they are mean and cheap, And so a real connoisseur of art is not after these petty things.
With this ground established, how would you define spontaneity in this context?
Huh. Spontaneity can be equated with an aspect of Pratibhā. If you take Pratibhā or imagination, again a rough and vague translation, no word of original insight and originality, which is product of one's own culture's contemplative collective understanding, cannot be easily translated into an alien culture's language. Only distant relatives, the translations can be given, a vague approach. So these are all vague, these are all tentative translations. But if you can define things, if you can define a concept, if you can define a paribhāsa, a technical term with a few sentences, and then once the definition is established, further deliberations can go with a rough or vague representative and immediate tongue. Pratibha, the very word itself is suggestive. Prati means often, repeatedly, repetitively, again and again. Bha, shiny. So the aspect of brilliance that's not felt once. It is the electric arc that is being struck repeatedly, dazzling light, unfailingly, in an unbroken manner when it is set, and such a thing is called Pratibha. It's neither Prabha nor Bha, it is Pratibha. So, spontaneity is invariably connected with Pratibha. If not, it will become gimmick. And gimmick perhaps can be called as a cheap thing like chitra in the context of chitra kavya, I can say. This spontaneity has to do with chamatkar also. The word chamat is connected with brilliance and shining. So we can keep pratibha. One aspect of pratibha is spontaneity. Pratibha prajnana vanonmesha shalini pratibha mata. Nava nava unmesha shalini. That makes newer and newer revelations often and often. And such a brilliance is called pratibha. This is as per the words of Bhattakauta.
Yeah, so that's a very illuminating definition. Is there, with this definition, do you see anything very unique to Indian art forms as far as this spontaneity or pratibha is concerned?
Very, very significant question. Yes, Indian tradition, Indian knowledge systems, Indian art, anything Indian is very unique. And that is unique because it is universal. Unlike many of the other aspects, many of the things belonging to other parts of the world, they may be unique because of their isolation, because of their special identity. But in India, anything which is essentially Indian is obviously universal. And this itself is a very, very unique feature of Indian tradition. That is art or science or philosophy or social sciences or whatsoever. Everywhere we have that universality, the bedrock of Indian culture, universality that is the undercurrent of every feature of Indian tradition and culture that makes it unique. In one sense, it's no more unique. It's no way unique. It is something like we have space is felt everywhere. In that sense, it is all pervading, and it is all pervading, and that's why it is special as well. This sadharanatva itself is asadharanatva. Sadharanatva is not commonality; it is universality.
Very well put, actually. So, the point I was trying to come to was, how does Indian art uh, provide ways to accommodate this aspect of spontaneity? If you can give a illustrative example.
Indian art, taking for example poetry, it constantly aims towards betterment by virtue of better, unique, and special or novel expressions. For example, if we take figures of speech or images, they are called figures of sense, embellishments of sense, arthalankaras, or figures of speech with respect to sound. There is figures of sound that are shabda alankara. In both the sense, we have a very big canvas of alankara, shabda and artha alankara. By combining them, we can generate innumerable features. And then they are contained in beautiful meters. And Indian prosody is very, very unique. For all the three types of prosodic systems are developed here. The Layamrita, Layarahita, and Karshana. Layamrita can be Matra Jati and even Parna Jati or Akshara Vrutta. And Layarahita is obviously Akshara Vrutta. And then Karshana Jati is singable, recitable, and singable. And in again, singable we have two aspects. One is with little music, and the other is with elaborate music. That's why we have verse meant for recitation and song meant for elaboration. Like that, the form is very, very unique, very accommodative, and it yields for so much of imagination. And we have a concept like meta language, Kavisamaya. By drawing, we can we can produce so many things. What is stated in Kavisamaya is not important. How it is being used, there it becomes very, very important. Like that, Indian art, for example, poetry has so much. So is the Indian music. No other part of world has the system called raga. Raga is highly individualistic because it cannot be sung together in a group. It is anibadha. It becomes nibadha only when it is set to a rhythm pattern. Rhythm pattern is measured by time, and its restriction grows further if we set it to lyrics also. If lyrics are composed and if the lyrics are set to time, that is tala, and then the raga, if it is infused into it, then it becomes nibadha gana. So anibadha raga cannot be imitated by two simultaneously. So it gives so much scope for individual excellence. Individual excellence means no bars hold with respect to imagination. This way, Raga has a very unique power of exploring the melodic patterns, not just within the frame of time, even beyond time. The very purpose of art is to transcend time, for our lives are all timed. But while experiencing art, we transcend time. Though for a moment they have crossed the frontiers of that temporality, and this is a very unique thing about Indian art. Likewise, Indian music, likewise, Indian dance. No other classical or non-classical or folk or any such dance forms of the world, they use a lot of gesture languages. We use no other dance system in the world uses the fingers so much, but Indian dance uses the fingers. Likewise, using the curvilinear movements, and then very subtle jerks, they are called rechakas. They are comparable to the gamakas of music. They are comparable to the shades of colors in painting, and such a thing is not found elsewhere. That's why the possibility of form has been explored so much only for the purpose of transcending it through the enrichment of music. And this is how Indian art has always stood the test of time.
It's very illuminating indeed. And thanks for all those illustrations, because that concretizes the whole idea of spontaneity and how it actually evolves and what are the elements that help in its evolution. So, this spontaneity or pratibha, part of it is probably uh, in from comes from your probably something which you have inherited. But I would like to believe that a lot of it is cultivated also. So, what is it that it takes to cultivate this kind of spontaneity required in Indian art? Is it long hours of practice, or what are the? Can you by any way suggest what it takes to cultivate spontaneity, if at all it can be cultivated?
You are echoing the words of Dandi. Navidyate yadyapi purvavasana gunanubandhi pratibhanam adbhutam shrutena yatnena cha vagupasita dhruvam karotyeva tamapyanugraham. One may not be bestowed with inborn talent, but an amount of achievement is always possible by virtue of learning, practice, and association with the people who have taste, who have imagination, and who have erudition. All our aestheticians, whether they belong to the lore of music or literature or poetry or dance or whatsoever, all have agreed to several common features apart from rasa, that is swarupa and rupa, three things which contribute to the creation of art. Kavya hetu, as we call, Pratibhā, imaginative power, that is one dimension of spontaneity. Spontaneity is yet another dimension of that. And then we have Vyutpatti, erudition. And Rajshekara interestingly says, Uchita Muchita Viveko Vyutpatti. Means erudition is termed so because it knows what is proper and what is improper. This discriminating power of propriety and impropriety itself is an aspect of erudition, a considerable aspect of erudition. And then abhyasa, very, very important abhyasa. Practice should be done to an extent that one will be free to move anywhere. As we sing more and more, we become free to move in all octaves. In all the octaves, the voice can easily move and it can stand at its will on all these swaras, whether glide over or jump over or oscillate over them. So also the body, to put in the words of Dr. Padma Subramaniam, she says the body has to be trained rigorously so that it has to be forgotten. The very purpose of training body is to forget it. Likewise, a poet is trained so much in the art of poesy, his tools will be very well used. Every bit of the tool will be well planned, well tuned, and well honed, so that the words will be at his fingertips. To put it in the words of Anandavardhana, Ahamahamikiya, Aham Purvikaya Parapatanti. To a Mahakavi, the words come on their own. How they come on their own? Because he would have undergone the training. Imaginative power can create new things in its mind, but to make it concrete outside, he needs these equipments. And that's why Indian art has constantly made one thing. The same power of imagination may be present in the art, whether one belongs to classical or non-classical or modern or traditional or whatsoever aspect of art. But a classical artist will be thoroughly trained, and because of the training, finesse of the product will be seen immediately. One can touch, one can feel. It will be so concrete and yet subtle, so that one can feel the completion, and that refinement is very, very important. In that sense, I think training has a lot of scope here. In fact, it is one among the aspects of classicality. To define classicality, we can draw one more thing, one more thread. There is a method to teach art creation. How to teach art? We can't. And yet, it can be approached. We all know language can be taught, but not poetry. Movement can be taught, but not dance. In spite of that, a tradition which is constantly punctuated by great scholars who are also great poets, great artists, great musicians, and great dancers, sculptors, and painters, that tradition would infuse the brilliance in the people who are newly undergoing the training. This unbroken tradition itself paves a way. We all know that because there is so much of importance given to imitation in the course of learning. Faithful rendition of the original is not a cheap task. It's not an easy task. It has its own merit. First, one has to faithfully represent the things as they are, and then try to shape them so that how they should be, how they would be, that should also be extrapolated. Before that, one should know this. Unless a person walks freely, he can't dance. Unless a person speaks fluently, he can't sing. Likewise, these things will come as part of the repertory, and that's why training to an extent has its own merit. Unfortunately, in modern art, they don't emphasize so much on this aspect of training because, in the zeal of coming out of the clutches of tradition, clutches of restrictions, clutches of prescriptions, they try to outwit the very purpose of training itself. It is Mulacheda Panditya, chopping of the tree itself instead of grafting it properly.
Extremely well articulated. So you actually touched upon the next aspect I wanted to discuss with you, which is about, so in our tradition, like you know, that there are two aspects in art. One is the artist himself, and then the Sahridaya or the connoisseur, the cultured connoisseur, if I have to have the nuance there. So I'm assuming the conditioning that an artist requires is pretty much the same conditioning even a connoisseur need to have to appreciate genuine spontaneity or genuine pratibha. Is that a correct statement to make?
Yes, very correct. How could you go wrong? You are again echoing the words of great masters like Abhinavgupta, Saraswatyastatvam Kavisahridayaksham Vijayate. Sahridaya, unfortunately, we don't have a proper word for that equivalent in English. My artist friend, whom you two know well, Dr. V.K. Swarma, a wizardous artist, he has coined one word by name artist, Sahridaya. Like artist, English grammar may not permit it, but Indian aesthetics would permit such constructions and creations. So it should be the connoisseur is in no way a mismatch. Is almost a reflection, is almost a second nature of the artist. So these are the two faces of the same coin. Art is the one coin, art, and then one face of that is Sadhudaya, and the other one is Kalavit, or Kavi, or Gayana, or Nartaka, whatsoever, Shilpi. So this amount of importance has been given, and hence he should be well trained in all these. And such a person can only appreciate real spontaneity because spontaneity can also be faked. At the same time, one should be knowing what is faking and what is original. For that, Sadhya should be available, and people like Vamana and others, they have even classified connoisseurs in different ways. And the best form of connoisseur is one who is Arochi, who cannot be satisfied easily. A hard master and very ambitious connoisseur who cannot be convinced easily. Such people are needed, and they can only measure, they can only evaluate the mettle of an artist.
That is,
Instead of
that is
begging for send an SMS, you advertise in the social media, such things, they are crowd pullers, and they cannot generate connoisseurs.
I fully agree with you. But that brings us to the next point, Dr. Ganesh. So, and that is, too much of anything is also not going to serve the purpose, right? So, spontaneity, how much ever we worship it, must be tempered by something to make it subserve art. So, how would you elaborate on this aspect? What is it that should temper spontaneity?
Well, very well said. It's very important to spontaneity can only be tempered by undergoing a thorough training in Aucitya and Anuchitya Viveka. Unless a person is trained in Uchita Anuchita Viveka, the lore of propriety, what is proper and what is improper, spontaneity cannot be challenged. After all, art is nothing but spontaneity channelized, imagination channelized. And hence Aucitya takes a lot of show. And that's why various schools of Alankarikas are seen in Sanskrit. Various schools of aestheticians, various schools of aesthetics, Riti Prasthana, Guna Prasthana, Marga Prasthana, Dhvani Prasthana, Vakrata Prasthana, like that. But all of them are agreed to 2 points. One is the core aspect rasa, and the other is Aucitya. Anaucitya dhrutenanya rasabhangasya karana prasiddhaucitya bhangastu rasasyopanishat para. This is what prasiddhaucitya bandhastu rasasyopanishat para. This is what Āśṭāvadhānī says in Punyaloka, a very popular Parikar shloka. This is the secret of rasa. Upanishad, this word has many layers of meaning. One is the highest truth, and the other is the secret, top secret. And that makes us come closer to rasa. Upa, near, nishadyate, that which will be placed. We can go to the proximity of rasa, we can become more intimate with the rasa, we can develop intimacy, or we can become too close to rasa or the real art experience through Aucitya. And hence, spontaneity should always be tempered with Aucitya. If not, it will become carefree. Then it loses classicality. Aucitya is the very measure of classicality. And all our features in modern literature or modern art or whatsoever, we call social relevance, economic relevance, political relevance, and such things, they're all taken care of by Aucitya itself. This one single concept, this three-syllabled single concept can take care of the three worlds which deal with propriety. And hence, an art which is relevant at one time may not become relevant in some other time because of Aucitya and Aucitya. We all know in Banabhatta's Harsha Charita, one parrot, at the very opening of the prose romance, it appears and it praises, eulogizes King Shudraka with a beautiful poem. There, it is trying to eulogize the heroism. While eulogizing the heroism of the hero, the parrot resorts to the pains and times of separations of the wives of the villains, wives of the enemies. And here, instead of the heroism, the pain of the women is becoming more pronounced. Perhaps during the time of Banabhatta, this verse would have yielded more of Veera, but now it yields more of Karuna, and that's why it loses, it lacks with Aucitya. And this verse, for that matter, is a failure. But that should not happen. That is Ramayana, Mahabharata, Kumar Sambhava, Kalidasa, or even Raghuvamsha, such great works of art, they have stood the test of time because of their relevance to all times, and that relevance through rasa, and the realization of rasa has happened by following the footsteps of Aucitya.
So, Dr. Ganesh, that brings me to something which just struck me, and that is whether it is spontaneity or whether it is Aucitya, both are probably little easier to discover as an individual artist than probably as a group of artists. So, would it be a right statement to say that when it comes to spontaneity or Aucitya for that matter, an individual performer is always likely to excel than as a group, than as part of a group?
Very, very subtle question, very significant as well. In our tradition, we have many people performing simultaneously, and a single person performing. Likewise, we have Ekalagana and Samuhagana. We have Ekala Nritya or Nritta and Samuha Nritya. And even one author can compose a poem or multiple authors, like that, they have many combinations. But as the number of people increase, the mathematical equations, they become predominant. They should follow certain patterns. Even today, the artists, when they are performing in a group, they will rehearse very much. When they are performing as individuals, That number of rehearsals may not be needed because interdependency will not be felt. Synchronization can happen only when they have some strict guidelines. Such strict guidelines means nibaddhatva, binding. One should be binding. Everyone should be binding with the other, and that can happen in nibaddha gana, nibaddha nritta, and nibaddha chitra or whatsoever. That's why, as the number of artists increase, the element of spontaneity reduces because spontaneity is not like constructing a building, brick after brick, pillar after pillar. It is like a tree. Tree has symmetry, but symmetry is not easily visible. The symmetry of a tree can only be realized completely when we can enter into the soil and realize the structure of the roots. As the branches which are seen outside to the naked eye, if you could see like with the X-ray eyes, the branching out of the roots, then we have the mirror image. That balance is there. Likewise, in spontaneity, in Ekalagana or whatsoever, in solo performance, it will see great heights that is not seen in the other form of arts, where multiple artists are seen. It's because of that. Like that's why Raga Lapa, that is Anibaddha Gayana, cannot be rendered simultaneously by many people. It can only be rendered by one. But a composition which is set to Tala and which has certain words can be very easily sung because they have the setting, they have the frame. So also a big temple has to be constructed, temple corridors, temple towers, everything have to be constructed. One can do. But while carving an individual image, not all people join together. If at all they join, they can join at different stages. For rough cutting, some people, and for fine tuning, some other people, and the finest tuning, something like the Netron Milana and other things, they can be done by the master artist. So also the painting, rough sketching can be done by someone. Fine tuning can always be done by others. The stage wise work is always there. Even so, while composing a poem, fine tuning can be done. Lots of changes would happen. That's why many artists joining together is more mechanical in nature, but not artistic. And one more thing that I wanted to draw attention to all the people who are going to listen to our deliberations. Aucitya, or propriety in art, sees its counterpart in philosophy, in Vedanta, as Viveka, Nitya Nitya Viveka. What is Nitya and what is Anitya? Nitya is Aucitya and Anitya is Anuchitya. So in Vedanta, we have sadhana chatushtaya, Nitya Nitya Viveka, Shabadamadi chatushtaya, and then Yahavatra Palabhoga Vairagya, Mumukshutva. These are the four things. Where Nitya Nitya Viveka is the first qualification, Aucitya and Anuchitya. And in the world, it is Dharmā and Adharma. Dharma, Dharma, Viveka. Aucitya is Dharma. What is Dharma of the world? He is Aucitya of Kavya and Kala, and he is Viveka of Vedanta. So these three are well connected. These are all not concepts which are thought over or which are created or produced by people working as per their own moods and whims and fancies. These are all not Purusha Tantra or Kartri Tantra in the words of Shankara Bhagavad. They are all Vastu Tantra, they are universal. Something like laws of gravitation, like the relationship between time, space, matter, and energy, the unifying equation of Einstein. Likewise, these are all Vastu Tantras, universal concepts. No aesthetic system of any part of the world at any time cannot challenge these things, and there lies the unique feature of Indian tradition.
This is extremely illuminating. Thanks for harmonizing the different ideas from different domains of Indic knowledge. This helps in understanding and getting a different perspective of a lot of these things. Going forward, coming to your own art form of Avadhana, how important do you think spontaneity is to Avadhanam? For the benefit of our viewers, Dr. Ganesh, I'll come back to you and let you go with the answer. But for the benefit of our viewers, Avadhanam is a great art where the Avadhani or the performer is expected to do extempore versification on a variety of topics on demand in under a variety of aesthetic constraints. Dr. Ganesh himself has given a very detailed and illustrative talk on Avadhanam on one of the TEDx forums. I would refer our audience to look out for that to understand the nuances of Avadhana there. So, coming back to you, Dr. Ganesh. So, how important do you think spontaneity is to Avadhanam?
Of course, all art forms need spontaneity. Without the magical touch, without that Midas touch of spontaneity, arts will not glitter. Arts will not stand the test of corrosion. That is very important. But this much can be said in Avadhana of any sort, where spontaneous creation for this part of a movement is very, very unique, and there lies the seat of spontaneity. And again, to draw parallels from other systems of learning, because to make point robust, we have to show that the relevance is found elsewhere, and we do see parallels. I have to draw from Vijnana Bhairava. Vijnana Bhairava is a work belonging to the Pratibhā philosophy of Kashmir, a very, very unique work which combines yoga and many other systems. And there, several practices have been given, Shiva Yogas. One such is called Sahasa. Sahasa in Sanskrit literally means becoming an outlaw. Usually, an outlaw is called Sahasi. This way of going beyond law is the nature of spontaneity. It is not, it turns out to be a hooliganism. It is honest and a very, very energetic approach of exploring new things. This is much needed. We know Sase Shrihi, it is called, only to heroes, only to daring and dashing people, every aspect of prosperity, every aspect of glory, they come in search of them. It is there. And this jigisha means the zeal to impress, the zeal to win the hearts of the connoisseurs is also very important. And I think Avadhanam, among the arts, it is the only Kshatriya art, I can say, Bauddhika Kshatriya art, where both Brahma and Kshatriya are combined together. I am ready to face any challenge. Likewise, an aesthetic war is being waged, and everything becomes fair in war and love, and it becomes more so fairer in art, because thus this war not sheds blood, it sheds rasa. And that's why this sahasa is very, very important. And that's why spontaneity is an inseparable aspect of Avadhana. And in any other performing art, we can see that. We can certainly see the shades of that. In music also, we do have. That's why we have various types of Avadhanas. I myself have developed the Śatāvadhānam and the Avadhānams. There we can feel that amount of spontaneity is there. But this, what should in Vedānta, again drawing parallels from other systems of learning, Vedānta talks a lot about indescribability, anirvachaniyata, and this anirvachaniyata is, it can't be expected, it can't be thought over, it can't be planned. This is not going astray and generating chaos. It is generating cosmos which comes in the guise of chaos. Chaos is the Purva Rupam and cosmos is the Uttara Rupam. All the dots which are scattered here and there, they will all be connected, and ultimately a beautiful painting or a beautiful sketch is being produced. This is going to happen in Avadhanam, and I think any art should envy this, and any art should welcome it, and any art should rise up to that. I shall also say that this is the hallmark of Indian art, because we all know that The world itself is created newer and newer. In the nature also, we do see the novelty, and this novelty can be felt more so in such spontaneous artistry, and that becomes the live wire, that becomes the very breadth of our arts. How to sustain our arts? It is only through these things. Let me explain them later. But Avadhanam has, like in other arts also. Unfortunately, like in any other art, we do have mediocrity in Avadhanam. And Avadhanam is an area where mediocrity may reign more because the bare minimum is the bar is too high, and the bare minimum thing to be achieved itself is so perspiring, and because of that, mediocrity can be very easily seen. Uh, these are
I agree
problems.
with you without elaborating on it. So, is spontaneity in Avadhana limited merely to versifying on hitherto unheard of topics, or do you think there is more to it than that?
Of course, the major portion, as you say, it is an Āśukavita. You have often mentioned, you have written as well. If one becomes an Āśukavi, much of the Avadhanitva, much of the aspects of Avadhani are covered there. It is the reality. But at the same time, this Āśukavitva itself takes many aspects, not just Āśukavitva. Many other aspects are there. It is something like a racing horse becoming a warring horse also. A racing horse main feature will be speed. But in a warring horse, you should have so many other skills apart from speed. Swiftness should be there, and then dashing nature should be there, courage should be there, and then receiving the difficult blows and receiving the brunt, everything is needed. Everything should be faced, and we should go beyond that. That is the case of warring arts. Likewise, in Avadhana, it's not just Āśukavitva. We have something like Samasya Purana, and Dattapadi, and even Nishedhakshara. Nishedhakshara is highly scholastic. There, the syllables are restricted, and Avadhani should go beyond them, and he should compose a new verse with all the restrictions. There, his erudition should always be backed by spontaneity. Many times that will not flash. If there is no flash, any amount of erudition will have nothing to offer. And in Aprastha Pasanga, not just in versification, even in other conversations, for example, Aprastha Pasanga, Kavya Vachana, a poem is being recited, sung by one questioner, then the poem is identified, it belongs to which poem of which poet, and what is the situation. All these things have to be explained. While explaining, the Avadhani should bring in the real beauty of it. True beauty can be felt only when there is freshness. We all know, even today, many products will have better sales just by one tag, that is, it is fresh. Freshness itself brings charm, like youthfulness. It brings so much of energy, so much of charm, and so much of promise. So, in art, freshness is youth.
Oh, wonderfully, wonderfully well articulated. So, you already touched upon a few of the Vibhagas, but if you have to sort of list down the Vibhagas of Avadhana in their increasing order of, um, you know, demand of spontaneity or something like that, would you want to categorize them, or do you think it is a futile exercise?
No, always an equipped mind tries to analyze things, prioritize things, and that is the beauty of our Shastras. Our Shastras never say that it is Anirvachaniya, indescribable. Even the Parabrahman is described so well and defined so well by our great philosophers. Anandavardhana says, in the very opening of Dhvanya Loka, Kavyasyatma Dhvanit Bodhe Yasamam Naka Purvaha Tasyabhavam Jagadurapre Kechid Vacham Stitam Avishayam Tattva Muchu. Some people say, what is suggestion? It's beyond words. Tena Prumaha Sahadayamana Pritaye Tatsvarupam. So when there is so much of darkness, so much of chaos, I am here to define it properly for the enlightenment, for the help of for the betterment of Sahadaya. So that Swarupam, I am here to reveal the very nature of that. So that is the great tradition that gives so much courage to people like me, lesser mortals like me, are also equipped with the graceful blessings of those masters. Samasya Purna, I think. There we have an amazing amalgamation of creativity, scholarship, spontaneity, lateral thinking, and out of box thinking, whatnot. Everything is put together in Samasya. There we have restriction and freedom. They find a wonderful harmony. It's a golden ratio, I can say.
Wonderfully well said. I know it's difficult to compare different art forms, but considering the fact that Avadhani has very little by way of choice in his performance, would it be fair to say that Avadhanam probably requires a higher degree of spontaneity than other art forms because basically you are reacting?
Huh. Fine. It's a very difficult question, but I shall attempt that. Even in my college days, I used to attempt any difficult question. At least marks should be allotted for attempting. The words of DVG, who translates Umarkham's Rubaiyats, ಯತ್ನಿಸಿದೆ ನಾನೆಂದು ಕನಿಕರಿಸಿ ನೋಡು. O Lord, please consider me as I put my efforts. Here, every art has an element of spontaneity. At the same time, training, practice, rehearsals, they do have a significant value. Ultimately, appeal and enjoyment is the hallmark of any art. Appeal can come by rehearsing, appeal can come by time tested reproduction, appeal can come by well rehearsed and practiced products. Anyway, I remember once Tennyson was asked, your poems are so spontaneous, and someone showed few lines from his In Memoriam long poem and said, these lines have emerged perhaps directly from your mouth without waiting for even batting your eyelashes. Then the poet said, I spent 3 cigars on that. So, contemplated, thought over, meditated verses may also seem to be spontaneous. That is there. But in a performing art, performance of what? Performance of already thought over, already practiced, already rehearsed things. That is yet again performance. It will have its own appeal, but the element of wonder is there that cannot be ignored easily. Again, going to philosophy, that is Pratibhā Shaiva Darshana, as many of the Kashmiri aestheticians, they are Pratibhā Shaiva Vadins, and in the Pratibhā Shiva Sutras, there is one sutra, Vismayo Yoga Bhumika. Vismaya is very important. And Sahitya Darpanakara Vishwanatha, he refers to one authority in his Sahitya Darpana that among the rasas, ultimately wonder stands supreme. Because wonder makes a person humble. But this humbling experience will not be painful. He will be voluntarily submitting. So there will be a graceful way of accepting the defeat that is seen while enjoying wonder. We are amazed by looking at a great waterfalls. If you stand in front of the Jog Falls or Angel Falls or even Niagara, everywhere we do see that element of wonder. And this wonder is triggered more when we come to know that it is spontaneous and not a rehearsed one. We all know, that's why again alluding to freshness. It is directly coming from the orders of a cow. A deshi cow means how crazy it will be, how much relishment is seen here. It is directly plucked from the mango trees, a fresh Pratyagra Amrani, like that if you say, people will be naturally carried away by that. And that's why this freshness, which is part of wonder, that plays its own significant role. Many Westerners were amazed by our Indian singers who, without even the script, on the spot, who improvise. They should be considered as music composers because in Western classical music, composer is different, conductor is different, and performers are different. But in Indian tradition, though the song is composed by Tyagaraja or Muthuswami Dikshita, Shyama Shastri or whatsoever, and even in North India, we have many Bandish composers starting from Tansen and others. That is one element, but that will not be parroted. It will be enriched with artist's own imagination that works spontaneously at that moment. To that extent, he is a new creator. New sangatis will be added up. So also in dance, these things naturally make true connoisseurs amazed by that. And hence, spontaneity is always seen in other arts also. But in Avadhana, this takes the cake. And that's why even a mediocre Avadhani's Avadhana is respected. Though not enjoyed fully, it will be respected. Respect is also a form of enjoyment. It's a form of submission. There's so many things. Many people like Ramayana because of the values, because they respect and they adore Rama. They would not have appreciated beautiful verses of Valmiki, Chancha Chandra Karasparsha, Shon Milita Taraka, may not be enjoyed by a devotee of Ramayana, but a Ramayana Rasika may enjoy it. But that will also have its role to play. These are very complex things, multiple layers are there. And hence, we should think that spontaneity has always its position, its place. Dance also. I have seen many of the beautiful performances of Dr. Padma Subramaniam. Even in odd situations, by her spontaneity, she appeals. Once 3G scandal was very much popular in the news media, print media, the then print media. Then Padma Subramaniam was performing Bhajagovindam, Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dikkani Karane. There she showed by Angika Nahi Nahi Rakshati 3G scam. She showed that very suggestively. Likewise, one dignitary, one minister, he was making his exit in the middle of the performance, which is highly uncalled for. She was performing one song of Purandardasa, Poguvudu Uchitave. Oh Krishna, is it fair on your part to move from Vrindavan to Mathura, leaving all of us here and making us suffer from pangs of separation? So the Gopikas are yearning, praying for Krishna to stay back. There she showed, turned to minister and said, Poguvudu Uchitave, Tarave, Hariye, like that. This way of spontaneity can always be done in music also. For that, the artist should be capable. Improvisation in terms of dhatu, music is done by our singers. But are they ready to improvise in terms of matu, that is lyric? It can be done. How come music is not that sacred? That is, dhatu is not that much sacred, so that one and all can ponder over that, can tamper with that, and only lyric is sacred. As in the case of Harishchandra, who is challenged with the Chandala Kanyas. Among five sense organs, is the skin the lowest, highest one, and the rest of the organs are lower. By looking at them, are you not get polluted? By listening to our song, are not get polluted? Only when you touch, you get polluted. That's how you think. How come this untouchability is practiced by you like that? They ask in the words of great Kannada poet Raghavanka, who composed poems before 700 years. What I'm saying is, in the lyrics also, there can be improvisations, again within the frame of Aucitya. Likewise, that spontaneity can always be done. M.D. Ramanathan used to do so. For example, Nanupa Limpa Nadachi Vachitiva, a very beautiful composition of Tyagaraja in Mohana. There, Nadachi means walking. O Rama, all the way you have come to bless me walking by barefoot. You have come to bless me. Nadachi, if it is repeated, it will create beautiful suggestion. Nadachi, Nadachi Vachitiva. Likewise, in the composition of, again, another composition of Tyagaraja in Shuddhadanyasi, Enta Nerchina, Enta Juchina, Enta Varalaina, Kanta Dasule, Neer Enta Varalaina. You may be anybody, but you also become Kantadasa, slave to women. Enta Varalaina, Neer Enta Varalaina, Var Enta Varalaina, Ink Enta Varalaina, like that, by little additions here and there, little filigree work, so much of beauty can be infused. That way of improvisation is always possible, and that is the product of spontaneity. And Verma,
So this,
D.K.S. Verma, while giving his live shows, he is the only person from India who made painting a performing art. It's a plastic art was turned to performing art, and many people have been inspired by him. And there, once in the very first show, the Jugalbandi Kavya Chitra, long ago, before 30 years or so, he painted a beautiful woman, Yakshi. Question was posed to paint Kalidasa's Yakshi of Meghaduta. She was playing the lute, Veena, and then he painted them using brush. Beautiful colors are being used. Ultimately, he put the bindi on her forehead through his fingers. That is the magical touch. You would have used brush, but we all know in our tradition, putting the bindi on the other's forehead by using the finger is an act of sanctity, is an act of Sanatana Dharma, and that has been used to show that she is Saubhagyavati. Her beloved Yaksha is cursed and is away from her. All these things can be connected very easily by Sahridaya, a cultured connoisseur, an enlightened connoisseur, you can say. That's how spontaneity is always seen in other arts as well.
so I take it that, and by the way, thanks very much for the detailed exposition and the illustrations. It just goes on to say that, it takes a very conscious artist to bring in this element of spontaneity, and that I believe is the realm of the very gifted ones. Some time ago, you did remark that the bar for Avadhana is a little higher, just to make it just for the passing marks, so to say. So does it make it a little difficult for people to approach and take up this art form?
Yes, of course. So, why it has been made so? Because if a person is walking on a tight rope, even if he is walking 2 feet or 1 feet or even few inches above the ground, it is as difficult as walking above 500 feet. But 500 feet walking at that altitude is considered an amazing act. By the altitude, we have the risk factor as well. So the risk factor adds to amazement, adds to adbhuta. And that's why if we have the bars higher and higher, not all people may come. But those who come, they will stand, they will enthrall. Because we all know such classical arts like Avadhana, they don't have big fan following. They don't have a fan following that can no way be compared with cricket or film or other things. But when the smaller group is available, connoisseurs, they should be given a very concentrated enjoyment. There's no meaning in dilution. If we start diluting, the element of wonder itself will be lost. And this is a Sahityika Krida, a literary sport. And in sport, we have fight and wonder, and the killer instinct as well, in a positive sense. All that has to be restored and even enhanced means the bar should be kept high.
Fully agree with you. If you don't mind a small digression, since we have remarked so many times today about creating wonder. Lately, we are living in the age of TV reality shows where there is an element of wonder which is created, which may be real, may not be real. So, do you have anything to say about the wonder that is created or shown in these kind of shows?
Course, art directly, openly declares that I am fiction. And that's why art cannot be blamed, and no one can file charges against art that it is deceiving, because it clearly says in a novel or in a film, all the characters are fictitious. If there is any coincidence, it is if there is resemblance, it is mere coincidence. Likewise, at the outset itself, it declares. But in the reality shows, where you said the element of doubt that it may be a pre-planned one, it is a stage conducted show, something like that. There, connoisseurs really feel that we are cheated, because they have not they're not genuine as to make that declaration. All that is being done here is fiction. They are trying to say that it is real, but it is fiction. So when art undergoes this liability, when it is not declared, but in a public show, spontaneity, it is not happening. So anyone can come at any time. He can ask, not once, many other times, uh, because to create surprise, to engineer surprise, it is very, very difficult. I remember Demille B. Cecil, a well-known illustrious director and producer of Hollywood. Great films like The Ten Commandments and The Greatest Show on Earth, such films were all produced and directed by him. He says, to make things look scattered, it needs so much of effort. Likewise, they may need so much of effort behind making that seemingly spontaneous. But as it is not reality, as it is not true, if the connoisseur comes to know about the fact, certainly he will get disturbed, and that should not happen. And that's why, instead of these virtual realities, actual reality should happen. And that's why people should always come to the performing halls, come to concerts, come to the dance halls, and they have to watch the artist in flesh and blood. Then and there, आपकी फरमाइश as विकार, the slips have to be sent from the audience to the stage. The singer, he should look into it, she should look into it, and then sing accordingly. So also the Avadhani. Then and there, receiving questions from the audience, or looking at them, or something happens. It so happened once in my Avadhana, one bat just surprisingly appeared in the Avadhanam hall. Then itself I composed a full-fledged poem on that. Such things, they make the art appealing, and they would serve the art for posterity as well. If not, it is a printed book, it is a short film. How many times we can visit? Certainly, there is beauty in a contemplated preparedness, in a contemplated and rehearsed production. There is beauty, but that beauty is not associated with the element of wonder. This can be brought in performing shows. And we all know the world itself is an amazing creation. It's constantly amazing. It's constantly wonderful. So these two aspects, one is getting merged in that nimajjana as we call, that is shanta. Another is being lost, submitting on one's own accord and losing one's own identity in front of the great amazement. Both are equally true and both are equally appealing. As we are focusing more on performing art and restricting to it. Other literary arts are there, other contemplative arts are also there. There, the parameters of Rasa, Dhvani, Aucitya, everything, they are applied as they are. But the prakriya, the process will be different. As because the vyapara means activity and metabolism that may differ. As
Dr.
you know,
Ganesh, yeah, please go ahead.
and as you know, dal or rice or everything is same in the case of dosa or idli. But because of the process, the taste, texture, appeal, everything will be different.
Yeah, so those of you who know you closely know that you're not just partial to Navarasas but also to Shadrasas. So,
Yes.
so Dr. Ganesh, uh, thanks for this long discussion on spontaneity with special reference to Avadhana. A couple of points before we wrap up this discussion. We've had plenty of penetrative insights on various aspects from you today. What I gather is spontaneity takes a lot of things. Takes practice. It takes erudition. It takes one to be a conscious artist, and I dare say it also has an element of risk taking associated with it.
Sasa.
Yes. So, in our day and age, the artists really have no privacy, so to say, because whatever they do, wherever they perform, everything gets captured and gets transmitted around the globe. So, with that level of visibility and publicity, is it possible that artists tend to think twice before taking those risks to, scale greater heights of spontaneity? Because you're not just your good performances, your probably slip ups also get transmitted around the globe. So, do you think the current day and age and all the recording and transmitting media are somewhat of an inhibiting factor when it comes to artists taking risks in their live performances?
Ah, very, very philosophical question. Very deep and profound question. Of course, this problem is there. Too much of recording, too much of preserving, too much of perpetuation for posterity, it makes everyone insecure. The element of forgetfulness is very important. As people should be forgiving, so also the connoisseur should be forgetting, and even the artist. This forgetfulness, it's something like the sound sleep. In our Vedanta, sleep is called as Nitya Pralaya. It is everyday deluge. And this is very much important. We should enjoy, forget. This way of reproducibility can happen only when the earlier pictures are naturally fading away. In our Jagannatha tradition of Puri, every year the chariot is built. Every day the earthen vessels meant for the Bhagavan Nivedanam, they are produced and they are thrown, use and throw in a sublime sense because it should give way to new. In that sense, over recording, over preservation makes people take the things for granted, and it's a very dangerous attitude as far as the performing arts are connected, performing arts are concerned. Spontaneity should also be rewarded. Rewarding in the sense it should be awaited. For awaiting, if we should forget the earlier one. Forget means its sweet memory should be there, and that should not be in actuality. Like the sunrise, every day there is sunrise, and we don't have the yesterday's sunrise being preserved. It is preserved only in our memory. This Nitya Nutanata should always be entertained being. This element should be promoted. For that, we have to live in the present time, present tense. We have to live in the present. व्यतीत विषया मतिरागामि गोचर बुद्धि तात्कालिकी ज्ञेय प्रज्ञा त्रैकालिकी मता. Present tense is experience, past tense is memory, and future tense is anticipation. this experience is called rasa. And rasa will be all pervading also because it will draw profusely from the memory and it will extrapolate amply towards the anticipation that is future and yet remains in the present. So, too much of technology, it makes us live with too much of yesterdays, and it is not nice.
So, how can an artist strike a balance here? I mean, what should his stance be towards how much spontaneity he would bring in on a day-to-day basis?
Of course, the
I mean, the question is purely in the context of this
performance.
technology-intense world. Yeah.
Well, the artist should not bother too much about one's own self. When we bother too much about one's own self, we become insecure. Let me lose, no problem. This attitude comes only when he has trust in or she has trust in her or his connoisseurs. Even the connoisseurs should also love the artist. And great love, it will be forgiving and forgetting also. I
Agreed.
think uh, people are too critical, and that criticality is not a product of wisdom, it's product of intolerance and arrogance. Such a such a sense of criticality is too harsh, too caustic, and too acidic. But if it is tempered, seasoned by considerations, seasoned by contemplation, certainly it will be enriching the artist and it will give room for his or her improvisation.
Yeah, well said, Dr. Ganesh. So, the last question for the day, in the ultimate sense, what value do you think spontaneity brings to the arts in general? Why is it that spontaneity is inevitable for the arts?
Huh. Connoisseurs may uh, lose the constraints of space and time by interacting with good art or great art. But even a good artist, not even a great artist, a good artist, to come up to that, he or she should realize that spontaneity even for a moment in that performance. If not, for him or her, it becomes a very routine thing. And very easily the person will get fatigued. The routineness will make highly tiring. And there is no difference between work and art experience. Art experience is not work. Art is not work. It is leela. Art is not karma. It is karma kaushala. It is karma yoga, and that is leela. So unless artists the moment, get the golden moments where he forgets his own self or her own self, and that can happen only when he too is new and he too is strange to something happening on the stage. When he also becomes a connoisseur to his own performance, then there is real beauty in art. And many people may pretend that we become connoisseurs of our art, but if the connoisseurs are not appreciating that, there is no beauty there. So connoisseur should always be appreciating, and the artist should also become connoisseur to his own art. I remember Veena Sheshanna of previous century from Mysore Royal, Mysore Palace. He was a palace musician and a very gifted artist who could play so many instruments. He would forget himself and he would shed tears and he would say, I'm aesthetically fatigued, rasa shranti. So please excuse me for not continuing the performance like that. This should happen only when the artist realizes that the sparks of spontaneity amply.
Yeah, Dr. Ganesh, that was really detailed and very illuminating on and various aspects of art experience in general. As a final comment, would you also agree that spontaneity is what really expands the envelope of the arts?
Of course, of course. If guesswork fails, if repetitiveness is not seen, then people will come to that. Why we see and enjoy the seasons, why we see mountains and clouds, though they are the same, they are just similar, not same. Yesterday they were, today they are, but in a different way. This type of enthusiasm to live continues to be so only when there is an element of spontaneity, and that's why this element of spontaneity can only make people come to actual art performance, no recorded one. During the time of Corona, for 2 years and 2 years or even more, I think, all these beautiful programs which accommodate spontaneity, they went to hibernation. I don't know when they wake up. That should happen. That is the only thing which can survive art. If not, art will become very mechanical, and that eventually make life also mechanical. As life becomes mechanical, in spite of affluence, people would feel life itself boring. Even people who can afford, who have taste, if they feel life is boring, then that's the doomsday.
So we just hope nobody gets there. So thanks for doing this talk and with your characteristic thoroughness and penetrative treatment of the subject. So on behalf of all the listeners of Atharva Forum, I thank you for your time and for your willingness to join us and share your knowledge for the benefit of everyone. With that, we come to the end of today's topic. Subscribe to Atharva Forum and enjoy the great content they have been producing. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Dr.
Thank you,
Ganesh, thanks to you
Aucitya,
too.
for such a set of illuminating questions, which are highly provocative in the positive sense, highly original. And this is the very dimension of spontaneity. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for your generous words. We hope to see you again.